Okay, today we're tying the picket pin as it's become uh, for the US. It's from the original recipe, it's changed over time. Um, the picket pin's, I guess, one of those flies that it stood the test of time. It was developed by Jack Beam around 1910, 1915, uh, primarily as a fly for Western waters, primarily trout. Um, in those days, they used gopher, and it was nicknamed a picket pin because when a gopher stands up on its hind legs, it looks like a tool the cowboys use called a picket pin. So they named the gopher or nicknamed it a picket pin. So when this fly was originally created, they used gopher or ground squirrel. But over time, as it moved eastward in the U.S., gained popularity, the gopher was replaced with gray squirrel, and actually, it's just become kind of the standard recipe here in the States. It's recognized primarily as a wet fly, but it can be greased up and fished as a dry, or in larger sizes, you can actually fish it as a streamer. It's buggy enough that it's a good imitation for a lot of terrestrial insects that would imitate, gosh, everything from hoppers and crickets to beetles, cicadas, moths, large flies such as horseflies. Typically tied in sizes 8 to 14 on a nymph, wet, or streamer hook. Today I'm using a Togan hook, size 8, 2X long, nymph. We're going to start out with our thread base here and tie back toward the point of the hook and then trim off our tag. Once we're there, now this is optional. I like to use it. It's a tag uh, using small gold flat tinsel. Again, it's optional whether you want to use it or not. If you don't, then you can just wait a minute and I'll be to that point that you would tie in. So we're going to add it here. Secure it to the shank. Then we're going to wrap backwards to about the point where a barb would be if I had a barb on this hook. And then I'll bring it back forward just in front of the point of the hook. This stage, I'm going to wrap in the tag. You want to use nice side-by-side wraps. You don't want to see thread or shank underneath or between the wraps. Somewhere probably on this size, around 4 or 5 wraps would be sufficient. And then once you have it secured to the shank, you can trim off the excess and then bring our thread back to the beginning or the point of the hook here. Okay. Now, like I say, I'm going to use gray squirrel, so I'm going to tie in the tail next. So cut a little clump of hair here for the tail. You want it to be the length of the shank of the hook, but keep in mind what the shank of the hook is. A lot of people will go and go, well, there's the shank length. No, you shank stops about right here. All of this starts to be the bend of the hook back here. So we're going to take that, measure it, trim it up just a little bit for tie-in. Then I'm going to tie it on top of the shank. keeping it on top of the shank as I wrap forward to secure it to the shank. Up to about 2 eye lengths or so behind the hook eye. At this point, we're going to tie in our rib that we're going to use, and we're using fine gold oval tinsel. We'll tie it in on the near side of the hook. Here, and we're going to wrap backwards, keeping it on the side to the tie-in point for the tail. Now for the body on this fly, we use peacock curl. Depending on the quality of your peacock curl, somewhere around 4 strips of peacock curl should do it. If you don't have very good quality peacock curl, you might need an extra or 2. And once we have the necessary curl, we're going to even up the butt ends of the hurl. And then we're going to go up and we're going to cut off 2 or 3 inches of the tips until we have a great tie-in by the tips. Now, there's 2 ways you could do at this point in time. One is you can go ahead and take your thread up to 2 eye lengths behind the eye. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my peacock curl, wrap it once around the thread, and then up and over, and I'm going to let the hurl push the thread forward. This is doing 2 things for us. Number one, it's strengthening the hurl, which is brittle, breaks easily to start with. So we're just adding a little more strength in there. It also enables the hurl to stand up a little better on the hook, which is what we like. Then we're going to tie off our hurl. And then we can come in and trim off our excess here. Okay, at this point, we're going to take a brown hackle fiber, select the correct size so that the fibers will reach about to the gap of the hook. Then we're going to, of course, trim off the fuzzy end down here and get it to the point or about where we'd want the fibers to be, about right there for me. And I'm going to trim off the rachis. Then I'm going to take a few fibers off the bottom and an equal amount plus a few more off the top, giving us an easy way to start our wrap once we start. Secure the rachis to the hook. And then we're going to wrap our palmer rearward. And we want to make sure that we keep our fibers going toward the rear as we wrap. So if you need to, just wet your index finger and your thumb and keep everything going toward the rear. When we get to the rear, we're going to bring it, feather rachis up to the top. We're going to take our ribbing and we're going to wrap it forward over the rachis. And we're going to do it in an even number of turns and evenly spaced. So on this size hook, it's going to be about 5 wraps. I'm going to tie it off. Okay, at this point, we can go in and trim off the excess of the rib, and we can trim or break off our rachis of the feather. Okay. Now, at this point, we're going to tie in a wing, and as I said earlier, it's become pretty standard for gray squirrel tail. for the wing. So let's cut some off here. Clean out the under fur, clean out the shorter hairs. And then we want our wing, when we tie it in, to be just short of the tail. So I'm going to tie it in about at that point right there. There we have our wing just short of the tail. Now, at this point, we're going to finish off with one peacock curl. Might need two, again, just depends on the quality of your peacock curl. Trim off that very brittle tip. Tie it in on the near side. Wrap a small curl. Tie it off. And then build a very small head of black thread. Once we get there, we're going to whip finish the head. Four turns. Trim off your thread, and then we're going to use head cement of your choice. I'm using bone dry, but that's just a personal choice. You could use healthy hoof. You could use any of the other UV resins out there. You could use super glue, just varnish, whatever you prefer. And in my case, I will then I keep the hook moving while I'm drying or curing the resin rather than holding it in one place. And there you have a finished picket pin. If you have any excess, we can do a little, as they say, clean up on aisle 3 here. And we're all done. And there's your picket pin fly.